A verdict of obedience of the Sharia court on a disobedient Muslim wife. This is a love story that was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. All characters in this book are fictitious, and any resemblance to real people, living or dead, is purely coincidental. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by a reviewer who may quote brief paragraphs in a review to be printed in a newspaper, general journal, or school or university magazines. This story is about 3 Muslim girls who were subjected to gross injustice, severe violence, and abhorrent persecution by Muslim men, religious leaders, Sharia court judges, and police officers in the Islamic community and the religion of Islam and its hostile, hateful, and abusive teachings against women's rights, which are innumerable. For example, beating of women, child marriage, circumcision of the private parts of Muslim girls, which is known as female genital mutilation or FGM, slaying them in honor killings, inequality between males and females in inheritance, testimony in court, marriage, divorce, men's guardianship over women, controlling their lives and destinies as if they are minors, physically handicapped or mentally retarded, and forcing them to wear the hijab, niqab, or the humiliating burqa as if they are scary ghosts. Muslim men are allowed by the Quran to have sex or rather rape without the need for marriage captive women of war such as wives, daughters, sisters, and even mothers of the defeated enemies who are called unclean infidels. Islam forbids a Muslim woman to become a president of a country or a boss at work or a judge in court, and she is strictly forbidden to lead men or women in prayer as an imama. Moreover, the Prophet Muhammad said the woman is an unclean creature just like a dog and a donkey, and therefore as a defiled being she annuls or spoils the man's prayer if she passes in front of him while he is praying. The Quran likens the woman to the human feces, which both spoils the man's ablution or religious cleansing. Many Islamic countries prevent women from going to school and work, and they are not permitted to drive cars, bicycles, or motorbikes. They are forbidden to practice any kind of sports, and they are not allowed to go to gymnastics, beaches, or swimming pools, cinemas, or theaters, and none of them is allowed to leave the house without her husband or with a muharram man the woman is forbidden to marry, such as her father or brother. They are also not allowed to fall in love with men before marriage or choose their future husbands or life partners. The story is about the 3 innocent Muslim girls, namely Intisar, Firdaus, and Mona. Chapter 41. The second disobedient Muslim wife stands at the Sharia court. The alleged legitimate Muslim husband of Intisar, Hassan Majub al-Hilali, and sits next to him is the so-called virtuous imam who performed the false marriage, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, and with them there is the eldest son of the despicable old man imprisoned, Mustafa, and the man of wonders, Fatakarer, who is the secretary of the imprisoned adulterous politician, Majub al-Hilali, and 3 new ugly men. They are all sitting in one corner inside the Sharia courtroom. In the other corner sits the so-called disobedient second Muslim wife, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, her lover and fiancé, Sami Osman al-Tayyib, his friend, the recognized Sudanese lawyer, Silla, his new girlfriend. The first innocent girl, Mona, the good citizen, Walid Hamza, and his girlfriend, Badriya, and the old woman, Sarah, who is the mother of Farida, Osman, and Intisar, and the second innocent girl, the late Firdaus. There are a few unknowns scattered here and there. Most of the seats in the Sharia courtroom are empty. Judge Maulana Abdul Mohsin Taha delayed his arrival for an hour. It's a very long wait for the stakeholders. At exactly 11:30 a.m., the court clerk announced the arrival of His Eminence, Maulana Abdul Mohsin Taha, Judge of God's Court, and the infallible Prophet Muhammad and his aides. They came an hour later. When the judge entered the courtroom, all the people got to their feet. His Honor wears a white jalabiya and a large turban. In his right hand he holds a gray prayer rosary, and in his left hand he holds a green copy of the Holy Quran. Before he sat down, he surveyed the audience for a while. When he sat down, the rest of the people sat behind him. Then he turned to his right side and whispered some secret words into the ear of the assistant judge sitting near him. After their whispers ended, the two judges laughed happily. His Majesty then raised his right hand, and the entire courtroom became completely silent. One could hear a pin drop. Then the court clerk stood before the Sharia judges and read aloud the following indictment. Today, Your Honored the Blessed Judge Abdul Mohsen Taha and the Honorable Jurymen, the Muslim husband, Mr. Hassan Majub al-Hilali, who raises before you his complaint against his lawful, disobedient and rebellious Muslim wife, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. This wife refused to live with him in his house, and instead ran away from him and attached herself to another man named Sami Osman al-Tayyib. This man has no blood relationship with her, except that he claims to be her lover. And her husband, Hassan, has some scandalous photos showing this evil man kissing, embracing, sexually harassing, and doing hateful acts with his disobedient Muslim wife in public places and in broad daylight in Khartoum City, when they were staying together in one room inside a hotel in the capital city, without the permissible Islamic marriage between the two. Copies of those shameful photos were filed with his lawsuit. The virtuous judge and his blessed assistants had previously seen these forbidden and obscene images and rejected them and considered them to be among the abhorrent actions of two Muslim adulterers. Accordingly, the husband of this rebellious wife seeks your justice with the wisdom and knowledge that God Almighty and His infallible Prophet Muhammad entrusted to you. When the above indictment was read, some of the two suspects raised their hands and objected, but the judge took the gavel and violently hit the table. The noise quickly died down and complete silence returned to the courtroom. Then the court clerk came forward and announced aloud the name of Sami Osman al-Tayyib. The lover and fiancé of Intisar got up and walked towards the divine book courtier. When he reached him, he swore to God while placing his right hand on the Holy Quran. Are you Sami Osman al-Tayyib? The judge asks out loud. Yes, I am, says Sami angrily. Did you encourage Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir to leave her legal husband, Hassan Majub al-Hilali, and then make her live with you in a forbidden relationship, like your slave girl or your secret concubine? The question is wrong, and therefore I will not answer it. Answer yes or no, the judge shouts. First of all, Intisar is not married to Hassan. Second, yes, she is my girlfriend and she is also my fiancé. Third, the sham marriage between Hassan and Intisar, a sinister plot hatched against her. Her criminal half-brother Omar did it with the evil man Hassan. I didn't ask you to tell us that. This court had previously verified the validity of the marriage contract and found that it was based on the Holy Quran and the blessed Sunnah of the gracious Prophet Muhammad. May God bless him and grant him peace. The Imam of the largest mosque in the city, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, submitted a written statement bearing his name and signature, the name of the husband, the name of the wife's guardian, and the names of the three witnesses. Maulana Al-Mazoon, who performed the marriage, is here in this court with one of the three witnesses. The other two witnesses and the wife's guardian are in pretrial detention due to some legal issues that are not relevant to this Sharia court. So, my question again, did you encourage the wife Intisar to leave her husband Hassan and become attached to you? This is a false accusation. Thank you, and please go to your seat. After that, the court clerk shouted the name of Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. Then he asked her to come forward. Her fiancé Sami refused to move. The courtman asked him to go to his place, but the angry lover did not respond. The courtman tried to push him, but Sami pushed him back until the clerk fell to the ground. The fallen courtman quickly stood up and was about to attack Sami. However, the judge stopped him. Then the angry judge pointed his hand at some of the policemen. 5 of them came running towards the lover, and without speaking to him they carried him on their shoulders and took him out of the courtroom. 5 minutes later, they came back without Sami. Intisar's name was then called 3 times, but she did not advance. Maulana Abdul Mohsen Taha pointed his hand towards her. Two huge policewomen stood up and walked toward Intisar. Mona and Badriya realized their intention, so they got up and went to her and whispered in her ears. She heeded their advice and got out of her seat. Then Mona and Badriya took her hands and led her forward. The two policewomen followed them. When they reached the court clerk, the two policewomen returned to their seats. "Put your right hand on the Holy Quran," says the court clerk. Intisar refrained from that until Mona took her right hand and placed it on the Book of God. At least, the judge Abdul Mohsen says, out of respect for God Almighty, swear by his Holy Quran and swear by the oath. Sammy's fiancé did not respond to the judge's request, but she continued to cry, pouring out her tears like raindrops. "Well, at least tell us why you don't want to live with your legal Muslim husband, Hassan." When Intisar didn't answer him, the judge said to her, "Are you also a rebellious and disobedient Muslim wife like your cursed and apostate sister Firdaus, who insulted, cursed and blasphemed against the infallible messenger of God Muhammad and accused him of being a pedophile man who loved having sex with female children like the mother of the believers, Aisha? May God be pleased with her." When the angry fiancé of Sammy heard the judge insulted and condemned her late, innocent sister Firdaus, Intisar could no longer control her anger. So, she exploded with some angry words. "Hassan is not my husband and I hate him. I hate him more than anyone in this world but you. I hate you more than any human being because you killed my innocent sister Firdaus and my brother Osman. You are a criminal, murderer, and bloodthirsty old man. You are more dangerous than the most evil Muslim terrorist. You supported and encouraged the kidnapping, rape, and murder of my young sister. Firdaus, you are full of hypocrisy and evil. You are supposed to be sentenced and convicted to death by hanging for killing an innocent girl like my late sister Firdaus and causing the suicidal death of my brother Osman." While she was shouting those words of denunciation, condemnation, and challenge, the third innocent girl, Intisar, pointed her finger at the bearded face of Maulana Abdul Mohsen Taha, the chief judge of the Sharia court. Everyone in the court was greatly amazed at her courage and boldness. Most of the audience got to their feet. Some put their hands over their mouths and over their heads. After that, the angry girl turned her face towards the selfish man, Hassan, and pointed her finger at his vile face. "You are cowardly, selfish, and evil person like this corrupt judge. I challenge you both to touch my body. If you ever touch me, Hassan, I will kill you. Only if I am dead in my grave or a murdered corpse can you dream of raping me. I say to all of you who are present in this court of tyranny and corrupt judges, there is no divine power in heaven or religious authority on earth that can separate me from my beloved fiancé Sammy, or prevent me from marrying him, or force me to live with Hassan as a disobedient Muslim wife through the rule of the jungle, which you call the verdict of obedience, or taking me away from my house through the policeman to the so-called house of obedience." "O police guards," the judge shouted angrily while his mouth was foaming like a raging camel, "take this cursed, disobedient, infidel, and apostate Muslim woman and expel her out of this esteemed Sharia courtroom." In response to his order, the same two huge policewomen rushed towards Intisar and forcibly pulled her by her hands and shoulders and dragged her out of the courtroom. They were followed by Mona, Badriya, Walid, and her mother Sarah. Salah remained alone in the courtroom. The judge Abdul Mohsen Taha became incredibly annoyed with the so-called vulgar and blasphemous words of the disobedient Muslim wife Intisar, through which she challenged the Sharia court judge and his jurymen. Never before, in the history of Sudan, has any Muslim girl or disobedient wife dared to challenge the authority of the Sharia court and the judge, and abused him with such obscene words. Her aggressive act and harsh words were considered by the judge to be worse than an apostate Muslim woman who burned the Holy Quran inside the court, cursed the religion of Islam and cursed God Allah, or insulted the gracious Prophet Muhammad. As a result, the judge became very angry and was breathing heavily. In the meantime, the two policewomen took the so-called disobedient and blasphemous Muslim wife Intisar out of the courtroom and prevented her from returning. Then the judge stood up and said before starting to issue the judgment of God and his messenger against the disobedient Muslim wife. This is the result of wrong upbringing and lack of discipling, shouted the angry judge. This is the outcome of allowing a woman to choose her husband. An adulterous and rebellious wife like that cursed woman dared to challenge the authority of the Sharia court and blaspheme our beautiful and tolerant religion of Islam. By God, if she was my daughter, I would have pulled out her tongue and then cut her neck. Another judge said, "O God, do not punish us for what the wicked among us have done." Then the court clerk came forward again and announced the name of the alleged legal Muslim husband, Hassan Majub al-Hilali. When he came, he put his right hand on the Quran and swore an oath. "Can you tell the court why your Muslim wife refused to live with you?" The angry judge asks. "Because she doesn't love me." "Do you love her?" "Yes, Your Majesty, I love her very much." "Are you physically fit to lead a normal married life?" Hassan did not understand the question. When he does not answer, the judge tells him. In other words, can you have sex with your lawful wife? "Yes, I can have sex with her normally." "Do you have money to support your wife?" "Yes, I have." "Thank you, Mr. Hassan. You can now go to your seat." When the judge finished his brief interview with the alleged husband, he saw the lawyer Sela raise his right hand up. "Please put your hand down. We do not allow anyone to tell us about his opinion in this court except for the two conflicting parties, the lawful husband and his disobedient wife. I do not want to advise the court, but I do want to tell the truth regarding the marriage in question. Keep your opinion to yourself. With what you called the marriage contract, this is a void contract. So, Your Honor, you cannot pass judgment on this void marriage contract unless it is legal and valid. Who are you to decide the validity of the marriage contract? In addition, do you have any blood relation with that disobedient and rebellious wife? I am a recognized Sudanese lawyer, and I know the girl, Intisar, her fiancé, Sami, and their families. We do not accept lawyers in this court, and if you have any objection, refer your complaint to the Ministry of Justice or the Ministry of Religious Affairs in the city of Khartoum. Would you allow me to tell the court the case of the alleged disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar, and her late sister, Firdos, and their struggle against their so-called legal husbands, Hassan Majub al-Hilali and Osman al-Tayyib? Also, I can speak of the other conspirators who conspired and performed the two sham marriages against these two innocent sisters without their knowledge, presence, and consent. Not in this court. This is the Sharia court of Allah and His Messenger, whose rulings were based on the Book of God Almighty, the Holy Quran, and the blessed Sunnah of our infallible Prophet Muhammad. May God bless him and grant him peace. Therefore, we do not accept and do not allow lawyers here. Go to a secular criminal court and express your objections there. Please sit back and keep your tips and stories to yourself. At first, Sela, the recognized Sudanese lawyer, was not willing to give up, but when he saw two large armed policemen standing up and advancing towards him, he sat down. When the disputing lawyer took his seat, Judge Maulana Abdul Mohsen started consulting the jurymen. After some whispers, he came up with the following verdict. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most gracious, and the most merciful, and prayers and peace be upon our infallible Prophet Muhammad, the best of prayers and peace be upon him. Maulana says out loud. After studying the dispute between the husband, Mr. Hassan Majub al-Hilali, and his legal Muslim wife, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, this court decided to pass the verdict of obedience against the rebellious woman, Intisar. The judgment of obedience to the disobedient wife must be carried out within 24 hours. If any of the recalcitrant wife's family, relatives, friends, or neighbors tried to prevent the police from taking her to the house of obedience to her husband, he would be imprisoned for 1 month. He will be accused of obstructing the course of justice, and a fine of up to 300 million Sudanese pounds, or both, will be imposed on him or her. That person may also be subjected to beatings by the policeman if he or she tries to hinder the arrest of the disobedient wife or prevent her from being taken to the house of obedience to her husband. Moreover, he or she will be arrested and imprisoned if he or she tries to remove her from the house of obedience or help her escape from her husband. Accordingly, this court sentenced Sami Osman Al-Tayyib to 1 month in prison, starting today. Trial ended, shouting court clerk. Immediately, the judge and jurymen hurriedly cleared the Sharia courtroom while they were guarded by 5 armed police officers. When the trial ended, neither of the 2 persecuted lovers' friends were more disturbed in mind and heart than lawyer Salah. His conscience bothers him greatly. He holds himself responsible for what happened to his best friend Sami and his fiancée, Intisar. When the 2 lovers received the Sharia court invitation letters, they decided to escape, but Salah stopped them. He convinced them that by fleeing they would prove to the Sharia court judge that they were guilty. Wherefore, he advised them to attend the trial and defend themselves against the false charges. He also told them that he would take their case before the High Court if the Sharia court convicted them and ruled in favor of the cowardly and selfish rejected lover Hassan and his gang. But now that the Sharia court issued its verdicts against them, his confidence and expectations were disappointed. He knows that Sami has been imprisoned for at least 30 days. Intisar will be taken by force to Hassan's house within 24 hours. If he tries to hinder the policeman, he will be responsible for breaking the law. In this case, he will be accused of obstructing the course of justice, and he will be sentenced to imprisonment for a month or more, and then he will be fined financially. He may even lose his license as a recognized Sudanese lawyer. So, he is caught up between the horns of a difficult dilemma. He has to choose between 2 difficult choices, each of which requires a great sacrifice. When everyone left the courtroom, Salah remained sitting on his seat with his hands on his head. After that, the good citizen Walid Hamza came and asked him to get out of the courtroom. Salah stood up and let Walid lead him by the hand. When they left the courtroom, they found that Intisar was still crying while she was surrounded by her mother Sarah, her half-sister Badriya, her friend the first innocent girl, Mona, and some unknown people. Shortly after, Walid Hamza stopped 2 taxis and gave their drivers the address of Intisar's house. So Badriya, Mona, Intisar, and her mother took the first taxi, while the recognized Sudanese lawyer, Salah, and the good citizen, Walid Hamza, took the second taxi and followed them. Chapter 42. The beginning of a dangerous escape. When the friends arrive at the house of the 3rd innocent girl, who is condemned by the Sharia court as a disobedient Muslim wife and another verdict of obedience issued against her, they begin to discuss the serious issue facing the persecuted lovers. Mona asks, "What can we do to help Intisar?" Walid says, "I think we are powerless." Badriya asks, "You mean, my friend, to tell us that we have to surrender and let the police officers come tomorrow and take her by force to Hassan's house?" "Well, my dear, can we defy the law?" Walid asks. Badriya says, "I didn't mean to say that." Walid continues that any attempt to help her will put us against the law. "I do not think that Intisar will surrender herself to the police without violent resistance and bloody fighting on her part," says Mona. Moreover, she said in court that if they take her by force, she will kill Hassan or anyone else who tries to touch her body. How can she fight and defeat the armed policemen, according to Walid? Wasn't this what happened to her late, innocent sister, Firdos, asking the first innocent girl, Mona? "I think we should hide Intisar somewhere until her lover, Sami, gets out of prison after a month. After that, the 2 persecuted lovers could escape to another city," Badriya said. "This is what I thought," Mona says, "but I think this selfish man Hassan has hired some spies to keep an eye on Intisar so that the policeman will come and take her to the obedience house in his residence tomorrow." Walid says, "You are right, Mona. I saw them sitting near Hassan in court, and when we took the 2 taxis, they followed us in another taxi." Mona says that they are probably standing outside the house now, watching Intisar's movements. While the friends are discussing the serious issue, Intisar sits on her bed and weeps in her room. She didn't hear anything from her friends in the other room. Salah sits quietly with them all this time. When he understood that his friends could do nothing to help the legally required wife, he asked them to go home and leave him alone with Intisar. Meanwhile, the 3 spies are still standing near the house of the so-called disobedient Muslim wife of Hassan. These 3 thugs were recruited by the evil old man. It was his eldest son, Mustafa, who introduced these three goons to his outlaw father. They are armed with pistols and are very dangerous criminals. Their names are Tia, Jigger, and Nisar. Tia is the leader of the spying gang. They watched the house very carefully. They saw 2 girls and a boy had left. They know that Intisar is still in her house. They were instructed to only monitor the movements of Hassan's rebellious wife. So, they didn't even bother to follow who they came out of her house. They know one boy is still with her. From 2:30 in the afternoon until 10:15 at night, they continued to monitor the house. They concluded that neither the disobedient wife nor the boy with her would leave. They were instructed to keep watch over the place where the wanted recalcitrant wife was staying. They were also told to watch over the disobedient young woman until the policeman came the next morning and took her to the house of obedience to her lawful husband, Hassan. At 10:20 at night, they suddenly saw the door opened and a handsome boy came out. At first they thought it might be the boy who stayed with Intisar. When he approached them, they realized it was not the person. They were told that there is no man in Intisar's house. Therefore, they are very worried about the new boy. Their ringleader found himself in a difficult situation. He has to decide whether to follow the boy or ignore him. While he was still thinking in his mind, he saw the handsome boy stop a taxi and enter. The taxi moved immediately. The commander of the spies ordered one of his thugs to follow the boy. So, another taxi was stopped and it went behind the first driver. After the 2 cars left, the gang leader used his cell phone and called Mustafa's cell phone number. "Hello, sir." "Yes, I am the chief of spies, Tia speaking." "Yes, sir, everything is under control. She is still at home. All but one of her other friends has left with her in the house. Sir, we are facing a small problem. Not very serious. A handsome boy has just left her house. We haven't seen him before. He took a taxi and headed towards the main street. Are you sure there is no such boy in the house?" "Yes, my spy Geiger went on his tail. I haven't received a call from him yet. Don't worry, he won't lose him. I will tell you as soon as he calls me on my mobile. Goodbye, Mr. Mustafa Osman Al-Taib." When the man, Tia, cut off the line, he started searching his memory for the good-looking boy who had left the house. But the boy's image does not confirm his suspicions. He concluded that the handsome boy could not be a girl disguised as a young man. The other spy also agreed to the result that was deduced by his leader. An hour later, the door opened again and another boy came out. He is carrying a small bag. Tia determined that the boy is the same person who came with Intisar and her friends. He remembered that it was he who claimed to be a recognized Sudanese lawyer and tried to defend the rebellious wife, but the judge prevented him. When the lawyer Sulla also stopped a taxi, the ringleader ordered his other spy to follow him in a taxi too. Immediately, the 2 cars drove in the same direction, chasing each other. The grand spy Tia was left standing alone on the road waiting for a call from one of the 2 thugs. In his heart, he still believes that the disobedient wife Intisar is still inside her parents' house. An hour and a half later, the ringleader received a call from one of his spies. "Yes, Geiger. Please speak out loud. I can't hear you clearly. There is a lot of noise on your part. On the highway. What is he doing there? Keep tracking him. Never let him shake you because Mustafa said there was no other boy in the house. He is in the food huts. Do you think he's planning to travel somewhere? Keep watching him, and if he jumps in a car, don't hesitate to follow him. Yes, even if you have to travel with him to Khartoum or Port Sudan. Goodbye, Geiger." After that, the chief of spies was left standing alone on the road. He thinks of breaking into the house of the wanted wife and seeing if she is still there. Somehow he gave up on the idea. A few minutes later, he received a call again from one of his spies. "Yes, Geiger. Nesser is with you." The second boy joined the first boy. "Call me in 2 minutes." When the commander cut the line, he called Mustafa immediately. "Yes, this is the leader of the spies talking to you." The other boy left in a taxi too. "Yes, I sent my second man after him. Jaeger called me. He just told me that the boys are sitting in the food huts on the highway. Most likely they are planning to go out of town. You want me to go there. But suppose it's just a hoax to fool us. Maybe they want us to leave the house. In this case, she will be able to escape safely. Yes, I can tell if she is still in her house or not. Don't worry, I can do that without any problem. Well, sir, I'll call you in 10 minutes. After the above phone conversation, the evil chief crossed the road and stood in front of the house of the so-called disobedient wife. Then he pulled out a bunch of keys from his pocket. He carefully looked at the door's keyhole, picked out one key, and inserted it. The door opened immediately. He entered as if he was entering his home. Then he searched all the rooms. He only found Mother Sarah sleeping in her room. Then he sat in one of the rooms and called Mustafa. Yes, that's Tia. She is not at home. Don't worry, my spies are following them. I'm going there too. Yes, sir, I will call you from there. Goodbye. Then Tia lit a cigarette and changed the position of his legs. In fact, he is sitting in Intisar's bedroom. Then he called Geiger's cell phone number. Hi, man. What? You are traveling on a truck. Eagle with you. Great. Where are you heading? The two boys are in the same truck. Don't let them run away from you. I have to call Mr. Mustafa. Welcome, sir. Your two boys are traveling in a truck, heading towards Kassala City. Yes, they are both in the same truck. I told my guys. Do you think they are on the right track? Excellent. 20 minutes. They will most likely arrive in Kassala at 1 p.m. in the early hours of the next morning. Yes, I will keep telling you. Goodbye, Mr. Mustafa Osman Al-Taib. At the beginning of the perilous journey, Intisar and Scylla are unaware that they are being pursued by two spies. They sit silently on top of the beanbags. An hour later, all the passengers were asleep except for two passengers. Truly, Intisar disguised herself as a handsome boy. No one recognized her as a female because she wore men's clothes. She is wearing slacks and a t-shirt, which is very rare for a girl to do in that part of the world. Every Muslim female wears an abaya and veil or niqab. Sudanese women wear something called a top, which is like an Indian sari. Their bodies are covered from head to toe, but their faces remain open. Intisar wears the clothes of her late brother Osman. She is wearing a very tight t-shirt and pants. Her big buttocks are visible. Any intelligent person would know that she is a girl, not a boy. She hides her long hair with a big hat. She wears black glasses, though it is night. The blind girl can only wear black glasses at night. The glasses are meant to hide her beautiful eyes. She rarely spoke with Scylla. They speak softly and whisper. She hides her face on her knees most of the time. Besides, it is a dark, moonless night. Their truck is going very slowly. Intisar and Scylla were immersed in deep thought. The two other passengers who are following them also talk to each other in whispers. They smoke constantly. Scylla notices that they direct them all the time. Although he suspected that they were following them, he concealed his suspicion from Intisar. However, he decided to see if they were following them. Before the truck reached the town of Al-Shawak, Scylla began speaking to Intisar in a whisper. The lawyer Scylla says to his friend Sammy's fiancé, "Do you feel sleepy?" I don't, say the runaway wife. The speed of this truck is very slow. How about we swap it for another truck when we get to the next stop? I think it's a good idea. When the slow truck arrived in the town of Al-Shawak, a few hours into the journey, Scylla and Intisar disembarked and headed to a food stall on the highway. The two spies also went down and sat in the same hut and asked for tea. None of the other passengers got off. After a 15-minute break, the driver asked the two friends and the other two passengers to get on the truck. Scylla and Intisar went to the driver and pretended they were talking to him. Meanwhile, the other two passengers have boarded. They light their cigarettes and wait for the two boys to get on the truck too. They are disappointed when the truck starts moving without the boys they are following. Our chief, Mr. Tia, shouts one of the two spies on his cell phone. They cheated us and managed to escape. We can't have them now. They had already climbed onto another truck going in the opposite direction. You can do it, but not us. Yes, their truck is heading towards the city of Gedaref. You can intercept them when they reach the highway shacks. Probably 2 hours, or maybe a little less. It depends on the speed of their new truck. Yes, we went down. We'll take another truck. But they will reach the city before us. Just check every truck coming into town. Of course, you can intercept them. Please call Mr. Mustafa and his father, Osman Al-Taib, and tell them to report her escape to the police authorities. Goodbye, Chief. The leader of the spies, Tia, is the head of the three thugs who were hired by the evil old man Osman Shaitan al-Tayyib through his eldest son, Mustafa, to prevent the so-called disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar, from escaping from her manhole until the policemen come the next morning and arrest her and take her by force to the house of obedience to her alleged husband, Hassan, in order to complete his halal Islamic marriage with her. He has to consummate their marriage by having sex with her, or rather, rape her by inserting his cock into her virgin pussy and deflowering her hymen. This is exactly what the incarnate Satan, Sayyid Osman al-Tayyib, did with her virgin sister, the second innocent girl, the late Firdaus, and the ringleader of the first gang, the beast man Alwash, also did with the first innocent girl, Mona. Anyway, on that night of Intisar's dangerous escape, the super spy, Tia, sat for more than 2 hours in the huts of the Gadaref highway, examining every truck coming from the east. But he did not see the two boys. What annoyed him were those drivers who passed by without stopping. After waiting another 20 minutes, he jumped into another truck and headed towards Khartoum City. When the other two spies, Geiger and Nisar, arrive at the Gadaref food huts on the highway, they find Commander Tia, too, missing. Then they phoned him and learned that he was after the two boys. He told them that he would go to the capital city and search for them everywhere in Khartoum. He also ordered them to get into another truck and travel towards his final destination. Meanwhile, since their truck drove past the food shacks on the Gadaref highway nonstop, Salah and Intisar are discussing one issue. According to the runaway wife, the lawyer must disembark in the town of Al-Fao and leave her to continue the perilous journey alone to Khartoum. She believes that Salah will put himself in serious trouble if the spies prove to the Sharia court that he helped her escape. Not only will he go to jail, but he will also lose his license as a recognized Sudanese lawyer. However, Salah does not agree that the runaway girl, Intisar, can travel to that cosmopolitan city on her own. She does not have enough money and does not know anyone there. She has no home, relatives, or friends in Sudan's largest city. Therefore, the best friend of her imprisoned lover, Sammy, does not want the runaway girl, Intisar, to go on such a dangerous journey alone to the capital city. Eventually, the legally required wife convinced the lawyer that the money she had would be enough to keep her in a small hotel in Khartoum City for a few days. When he could not convince her, Salah agreed to return to the city of Gadaref, but he promised to travel soon to Intisar to meet and help her in the capital city. At 3:30 in the morning, the two friends reached the town of Al-Fao. Salah then got off and got into another truck heading towards Gadaref City. Meanwhile, Intisar continued her dangerous journey to Khartoum City alone. It is very dangerous for a beautiful girl of her age to venture on such a perilous journey. Anything could happen to her. She can get gang raped by cops or get robbed by the numerous crooks in that cosmopolitan city. Yet her dire circumstances force her to escape the law and face all the unknown future on her own. Likewise, it was a difficult night for Salah. It was he who came up with the idea of her running away. He did not want what happened to his beloved late girlfriend, Firdaus, to happen to Sammy's beloved girlfriend, Intisar. So, he suggested she disguise herself as a boy. He knew that the alleged husband, Hassan, had hired some spies and ordered them to keep an eye on his so-called disobedient wife, Intisar, so that the policeman would come the next morning and apply the discipline law or verdict of obedience to her and forcefully drag her to his house. He knows that the cowardly and selfish rejected lover might beat and rape her to death as the evil old man did to her late sister Firdaus. To avoid repeating such a tragic end to Intisar, lawyer Salah is determined to break the law and save the life of an innocent girl from those evil conspirators and the unjust Islamic law system. He told her to wear her late brother Osman's shirt as well as his pants and to act like a boy. She also put on her head a hat or her brother's cap. Moreover, she used one of her late brother's turbans and wrapped it tightly around her chest and in this way reduced the size of her large breasts. She did the same trick and wrapped another long turban around her thighs and buttocks. In this way, she also slimmed down her large ass. Of course, she removed makeup from her face and eyes and put on black glasses. After doing that, she started to look like a handsome teenage boy. At any rate, on that fateful day when Sudanese lawyer Salah arrived at his home, it was 7:30 the next morning. He went straight to his bed. He's so tired that he didn't even bother to change his clothes. He fell asleep immediately. He was awakened from his deep sleep by 3 policemen at around 10 a.m. When he opened his eyes, he saw the policemen standing in front of him like 3 black demons. At first he thought he was either seeing a nightmare in his dream or hallucinating. One of the policemen grabbed his hand and pulled him to his feet. "Are you the Sudanese lawyer Salah Hassan Ahmed Salah?" one of the 3 policemen asks in a harsh voice. "Yes, sir," Salah replies. "You are under arrest." "Why am I under arrest?" "You are accused of helping the disobedient wife, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, to escape from law enforcement officers and escape from her legal husband, Mr. Hassan Majub al-Hilali." Attorney Salah did not try to deny this accusation. He only allowed the policemen to handcuff him and take him out of his house like the dangerous criminal to their car. Accordingly, on that fateful day, also the recognized Sudanese lawyer Salah went behind bars where his good friend, the civil engineer Sammy, was locked up. Chapter 43. The disobedient runaway wife becomes homeless girl in Khartoum City. On the 5th day of her perilous escape, the so-called disobedient Muslim wife Intisar lost all hope and became a homeless girl in the capital city of Sudan. She expected Salah to come to her after 2 or 3 days, but he did not. On the 4th day, she concludes that he may have been arrested for helping her escape. She managed to live with what little money she had for 4 days. She stayed in a small hotel the whole time. It is the same hotel where she stayed with Sammy and their other 2 friends, Salah and Mona, when they came to investigate the murder of her late sister Fergus. No one in the hotel knew she was a girl disguising herself as a boy. She kept pretending to be a boy and dressed as a handsome young man. No hotel in Sudan allows a girl to stay without her husband, father, or brother. They must present an official government-issued document with their photos proving their relationship. So, Intisar booked a room for a boy named Sammy Salah Eldin. She used the name of her lover and his best friend. When her money ran out, she knew that the hotel manager wouldn't keep her for much longer. On the 5th day, the fugitive wife carried her small bag, left the hotel, and began wandering aimlessly through the streets of Khartoum. Before leaving her room, she had her last lunch in the hotel's bistro. Then she went to the washroom and changed her clothes. She didn't need to hide her identity as a girl anymore. She put on her feminine clothes and went out. When she got out, Intisar went down to the first street and started walking aimlessly. She walked for 3 hours without stopping. She realized she was heading towards a less populated area. She changed direction and walked for another 2 hours until she reached the bank of the Nile. Then Intisar sat on a bench by the waters of the river. Now it's sunset time. She remembered that she once sat in the same place along with her handsome lover on her first visit to the capital city. When Intisar remembered Sammy, she started crying silently. She put her head in her lap and continued to cry. While she was crying, she felt someone touch her shoulder. The hand quickly moved to her thighs until it reached her private parts. Intisar felt as if an electric current hit her body. She was paralyzed for a while. She looked up as she overcame the shock. She saw the big nose, mouth, ears, and bald head of an ugly man sitting near her on the same bench. Intisar jumped out of her seat as if she had detected a poisonous snake moving near her. The scary guy is about to kiss her lips. She got up and jumped back until she fell to the ground. The ugly man also stood up and started walking toward her. She quickly stood up and ran away, as if escaping from a dangerous beast. She ran and ran until all her strength was exhausted. Then she stopped and looked back. She now does not see the scary man. She is still shaking and sweating. Then Intisar remembered that she had left her small bag on the bench. All her pendants are in that bag. Nothing was left with her but her shoes and the dress she was wearing. Even the little money she had saved for her last meal of the day in the bag. She wondered if she would go back for her bag, but the fear of the huge, ugly face made her stand still. She concludes that the man may have actually stolen her bag and purse. Then her watch shows 9:45 p.m. Intisar looked around her and saw a large, decorated ship floating on the river. She reminded the beautiful time she had spent before with her handsome lover, Sammy, at Hamad's floating restaurant. Her tears started falling. She was tempted to walk into the beautiful restaurant that she had told her lover before that it looked like a lover's paradise. She wished to go and sit at the same table at which she sat before with her imprisoned lover Sammy. But she remembered that she had no money for the entrance ticket. However, the runaway wife decided to take a look at it from the outside. She slowly walked towards the entrance. When she reached the entrance, Intisar started looking at the amazing beauty of the floating restaurant. Her eyes now rained with tears of deep sadness. She saw the guard approaching her. She expected him to ask her to leave. But instead, she sees him approaching her, smiling, his face revealing that he is happy to see her. "How can I help you, miss?" said the guard politely. "Thank you, sir. I just loved looking at this amazing place. I was attracted by the beauty of the ship, which was decorated with all kinds of colored lights. But you look like a tired and unhappy girl. Is there anything I can do to help you?" "I'm tired because I was doing some exercises by the river. Do you want anything to drink or eat?" "I would be very grateful if you would give me a glass of water." "I can do that gladly. Can you come in? No need to stand outside and drink water." Intisar was delighted when the guard invited her to come. When she entered, he asked her to sit on his little chair. She sat and waited for him to bring her a glass of water. And he came. The thirsty girl poured what was inside the bottle completely into her dry mouth. The man went again and brought her another glass of water. She also drank the second cup fully and thanked him. After that, she got to her feet and decided to leave. "You can sit and rest." "Thank you. I have to go." "Oh, young woman, in which area do you live?" "I am a stranger, sir. I have no relatives or friends in the city. Someone stole my bag and my money. I know you are a very good man. Can you help me?" "Yes, I can help you. What do you need? Money or shelter?" "I would be very glad if you would help me buy some food." "Yes, of course, I can buy your food and give you good shelter." "I do not know how to thank you, sir." "Come with me, miss." Intisar's heart was filled with joy and happiness. The homeless girl smiled happily and followed the guard. She honestly believed his promise. He took her to the end of the floating restaurant where he lives in a small booth like a hole for rabbits or barn for pigs. His small room is hardly enough to house one person. There is a small bed and a table. Intisar wondered where the kind guard would sleep if he gave her his room and bed. "This is my humble little place." "Dear sir, this is enough for you alone. But how can I sleep here if you have no other place?" "Young lady, I don't need to sleep on the bed. I can sleep on the floor." "Sir, I cannot sleep with you in the same room. But as you said to me, you are a stranger, homeless, and without money. If you do not accept my offer, where will you go and where will you sleep at night?" "Thank you, sir. No matter what happens to me, I can't sleep in the same room as you. You are neither my husband nor my relative. So, I must go now." "Young lady, at least wait and eat some food before you leave." The hungry homeless fugitive wife sat on the bed and waited for her generous host to bring food. After a few minutes, the guard brought a tray of food and placed it on the table in front of her. And he said to her, "Your eyes reveal that you are very hungry. Am I right?" "Yes, sir, and I am very grateful to you. I will never forget your kindness and your generosity." "Oh, my sweet darling. This food costs me a lot of money. In this restaurant, the food is very expensive. This is a popular tourist site. I hope you quench your thirst and satisfy your hunger. It is more than enough for me." When Intisar said these words, she extended her hands forward and took a piece of bread. Then she dipped it in a delicious chicken curry and swallowed it. Before she could eat another piece of bread, she felt the guard's hand touch her left shoulder. She quickly stood up and pushed his hand away. Please don't touch me again. Listen, lovely girl, there is no man in this town who can feed those sweet lips without kissing them. I bought you this expensive food out of my own pocket, and you have to pay for it. I know you don't have money, but you can let me have sex with you. I can use a condom to prevent you from getting pregnant and having an illegitimate child. I will pay you for it. I can make you my misere wife and keep you here with me as my secret concubine. I can't marry you because I have already 4 Muslim wives at Tootie Island. Therefore, I want you, my sweetie, to stay permanently with me in this small room and be my. Before the polygamous husband could finish his words, the homeless girl ran away from him as if running from another beast man. Intisar fled out of the beautiful floating restaurant, and she is back on the streets again. She quickly crossed River Nile Street and stopped running. When she looked at her watch, she realized that it was too late for her as a lonely teenage girl without a male chaperone to protect her while wandering aimlessly in such a desolate area. The place became deserted except for a few passing cars. She understood that she would soon run into the police officers. She knows the policemen will either try to gang rape her or arrest her as a homeless street prostitute. She also remembered running from the law. If they knew she was a disobedient Muslim wife running from the law, they would take her back to Gadaref City Police, and then the police would send her to the home of her so-called legal husband. That's why she decided to find a safe hiding place to shelter her during the night. The runaway wife suddenly remembered that beggars and homeless people in every city in the Muslim world spend their nights in mosques. So, the homeless girl decided to look for a nearby mosque and spend her first night there. While she was wandering aimlessly, she saw an old man walking along the road. She ran towards him and stopped him. "Peace be upon you, my dear uncle," the homeless girl says politely. "My daughter, peace be upon you." "Thank you, my kind father." "Yes, my beloved daughter, how can I help you?" says the old man happily. "Can you direct me to the nearest mosque?" "Yes, I can. But you're a young lady and a woman? Why do you want to go there at such a late hour?" "I just want to go there to pray." "But you're a teenage girl and a female, and besides that the last prayer of Elisha is over. The mosque is now closed. Only beggars, vagabonds, and loafers will sleep there. Never mind the reason for my visit to the mosque. I would be very grateful to you if you would direct me on how to get to the house of God." "All right, my daughter, keep going this way until you come to the end of this long street. From there turn to your right and walk until you see a large playground. You will find the Grand Mosque on the corner of the stadium. You will see the tall minaret of the largest mosque in this capital city." "Thank you, dear uncle." "You're welcome, my good daughter. May God Almighty grant you success, and His beloved Prophet Muhammad helps you too." "Thank you, my good uncle. God's angels are with you too." When the kind old man left, the runaway wife felt for the first time since she left the motel that she was not walking around aimlessly. She is now walking towards the house of God, and His mighty angels surround her from all sides. She is looking for His protection. Therefore, with such confidence and great expectations, the fugitive and homeless wife went very quickly with her head held up high in honor and courage. Still, she walks and looks in all directions. She is afraid that one of the bad men will attack her from behind and rape her, then kills her to hide his heinous crime. She can hear cars passing by and some stray dogs barking in the distance. Then she saw the big playground, and in its eastern corner she saw the splendid building of the huge mosque. Then Intisar wandered from the outside around the stadium until she reached the huge gate of the biggest mosque in Sudan. She knocked hard on his iron door. She used a stone to hit its big iron gate, which appeared to her as a gate of a huge castle of a king and his queen. She then saw an old man coming towards the gate. He has a long white beard. He opened the door for her. He holds a thick stick in his right hand, and his left hand holds prayer beads. "Who are you?" the old man asks. "I am a Muslim girl looking for a home." "You are a young woman." "Yes, I am a homeless young woman looking for shelter in God's house." "Woman, please go to the hotel. There is no place here for women. Only poor males are allowed to sleep in the mosque." "I don't have money to pay for the hotel." "Where's your house?" "I don't have a home." "Where are your parents?" to another truck, and I have no parents or relatives in the city. Do you want to tell me that you fell from the sky? I am a stranger in this big city. I need shelter. You know that as a female, I can't sleep on the streets. Young woman, I can't keep you in the mosque. The place is full of beggars and homeless men. No one is allowed to sleep inside the prayer sanctuary. I can sleep in a corner of this place. What did you say, young lady? Dear uncle, please let me sleep at least one night inside this spacious house of God. Do you want to sleep with these beggars, assholes, and crazy men? If you let me in, I can take care of myself. Inside this spacious house of God. Listen, little girl, some of these poor males have never seen or touched women's bodies in their lives. So, if I let you sleep with them, not only will they gang rape you, but they will also cut you into small pieces and then eat your raw flesh like hungry cannibals. In that case, uncle, keep me inside the chapel. If I keep you inside the prayer hall, the virtuous imam and the faithful men will burn the mosque. Why do they burn God's house? Keep me inside the chapel. Because you are a female, and our Islamic religion does not allow any woman under any circumstances to set foot inside the pure hall for prayer. What would happen if a woman entered the sacred chapel and slept in it for one night? You will defile it and make it an unclean prayer hall, as most women are unclean. Uncle, this is not true. Are you, small girl, more knowledgeable than the messenger of God, our infallible prophet Muhammad? May God bless him and grant him peace. He forbade entering mosques for all women. He told them to pray at home. I know the religious restriction of women. Then why did you come here if you know that? Uncle, but I only need lodging for one night. I told you I can't keep you here because you are an unclean creature. I am not an impure creature of God. The infallible messenger of Allah, our blessed prophet Muhammad said, you are a wara and nagisa, which means as a woman you are naked and unclean, because you are deficient in religion and intellect. He also said, if a woman leaves her house, Satan will be her host. The prophet also said the woman comes in the form of Satan and retreats in the form of the devil. Well, sir, can you at least give me the address of residence of Maulana al-Mubarak, the virtuous imam of this great mosque? If I give you his address, I will lose my job. Why will you lose your job? He will ask me why you sent me a street prostitute to my sacred abode? I'm neither a whore nor a street girl. If you're not a street hooker, why don't you go back to your husband or your parents? I don't have a husband and my parents aren't in the city. Why did you run away from your home and become a homeless girl? Uncle, I told you I'm not a bad girl. I want you to give me the address of the imam. If you would like to meet the blessed imam, a woman, come at noon tomorrow after the Friday prayer. But don't tell him I told you that. When the old guard had said these last words, he closed the iron gate on the face of the homeless girl. Intisar felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on her. After that, the disappointed fugitive wife looked around and then looked at her watch. The time was shown at 11:55 p.m. She looked around and saw a few people still moving here and there. She knows any of those guys, if he saw her at this late hour, would mistake her for a homeless street prostitute. She decided to find somewhere to hide until morning. Intisar crossed the road and started walking under the dark shadows of the closed shops. She doesn't want anyone to notice her movements. Unfortunately, a short man actually saw her while she was crossing the road. She heard his footsteps and saw him following her like her night shadow. She felt him quickly approaching her. When he reached close to her, she started running. The man started running after her as well. After 5 minutes of running, Intisar found herself in a quiet residential area. Nobody can be seen on the road. Intisar became so exhausted from wandering aimlessly on the streets for many hours that day. She knew she couldn't run anymore. The man is almost within reach. When she felt that the man might grab her at any moment and then rape her, she pushed the first gate that reached into her hand. Then she hurriedly entered the spacious compound. The man put his hand on the gate too, but hesitated to enter. Then he saw the street horse standing in front of the door. He mistook her for a homeless prostitute or a bad girl who ran away from home because she had conceived an illegitimate child through adultery and her father or brother wanted to slay her in an honor killing. He understood that she would be expelled by the inhabitants if she had no relatives living there. Then the homeless girl pretended to have pressed the doorbell. When he saw her hand touching the doorbell, he quickly turned away and disappeared. Then Intisar lifted her hand from the doorbell and started walking aimlessly through the huge complex. Now she is afraid to go out. She expected the chasing stalker to hide somewhere and wait for her to come out again and jump on her. While she was wondering what she should do in such a difficult situation, an idea suddenly came to her mind. Intisar saw many cars inside the big compound. She went to the biggest car and crawled to her knees and hid under it. Then she took off her shoes and used them as a pillow. Within minutes, the tired, fugitive homeless wife fell into a deep, dreamless sleep and began to snore. Chapter 44. The fugitive wife stands before God's house, seeking help. The butler Banjos gets up every day at 4 a.m. to wash cars in the vast compound except Friday morning. Friday is a public holiday in every Muslim country, so no one needs to get out in his car early to go to work or school. Therefore, that morning the hardworking servant, Banjos, enjoyed his Good Friday sleep until 5 o'clock because it was his only day off. He works like a machine 6 days a week. More than 20 cars were kept every day for him to wash them all. He is a servant in one house of a rich family, but he washes everyone's cars to earn extra money. Originally, Banjos was from the state of South Sudan. His real name is John Dang, but everyone calls him Banjos, which means little boy in his Dinka language. Though he is a paid servant, everyone calls him the slave Banjos. This is the racist way the so-called Arab Sudanese call the black African Sudanese who come from Darfur region, Nuba Mountains, and south of Sudan. It will take the servant Banjos 2 hours to wash all the cars. He always starts with the largest car and then goes all the way to the smallest vehicle. While doing the laundry, Banjos likes to whistle some of his favorite songs. He has picked up most of his favorite songs from Hindi films. He loves Indian Bollywood movies, Hollywood cowboy movies, and other Western action movies. He hates Egyptian Arab films. John Dang always wonders why Sudanese Arabs waste their money watching these boring Egyptian films. Butler Banjos works ridiculously hard every day with one goal in his heart. He earns enough money so that he can buy 2 meals and also buy a movie ticket to watch a beautiful Indian movie or an American cowboy action movie. He doesn't eat his first day meal because breakfast for poor people like him is considered a luxury food which he can't afford to buy. The servant Banjos doesn't have a bank savings account or ambition to collect money to use during rainy days. He does not have a girlfriend or wife or is likely to have one in the future. He is like the gorilla man Shakash Wad al-Haram. For him, girls are a waste of money and a never-ending hassle. He loves some beautiful and sexy Indian heroines and self-masturbation, or what Sudanese guys call hitting sweetness with his erect dick and robbing it by his right hand until he ejaculates over the fantasy of his actress's naked body and pours his semen on the floor in the bathroom instead of her imagined pussy is the only way to satisfy his love from one side and a humpback. For a long time, Banjos was in love with Bollywood film actress and former Miss World Aishwarya Rai. But he recently dumped her and fell in love with Katrina Kaif. He loves the sweet and sexy Katrina and appreciates her for her beauty, courage, outstanding achievements, and noble qualities. However, the main reason that prompted him to switch his love was the lovely Bollywood actress Aishwarya married to another Indian film actor. The handsome, imaginative Sudanese actor John Dang does not like sharing the girl of his dreams with another hero. So that Friday morning, Banjos got up at 5:15 a.m. to go about his daily routine. He came with a bucket of soapy water and 2 towels. His heart is happy and his lips are whistling his favorite Hindi song from the latest Bollywood film hit. When he got into the biggest car, he put the bucket down and folded the sleeves of his dirty shirt up to the shoulders and his torn trousers up to the knees. Then he dipped the largest towel in his hand into the bucket of cold water and began his work. His first song finished, and he started another song from the same movie. It took 10 minutes to wash the first car. Yet the hardworking slave Banjos has a habit of looking under cars. So, he got down and knelt to look for some luck in the hope of finding some coins that might have accidentally fallen out of a rich man's pocket. Instead of a few coins, he saw the runaway wife, Intisar, lying on her back, sleeping like a dead young teenager. He wasn't shocked or terrified if he saw a beggar or a dog. But seeing such a beautiful girl lying under the car like a corpse was beyond his expectations. Accordingly, his 5 senses were instantly frozen and his body paralyzed. It took him a long time for all 5 of his senses to work again. He stared at Intisar's beautiful face for a while. All kinds of murders he saw in Western movies and Eastern films became real to him. As a result, he opened his mouth as wide as he could without damaging its roofs. Then the extremely frightened slave boy John Dang went into the loudest scream he had ever shouted in his life. His screams became louder due to the stillness of the area and the echo of the tall building. Within a few minutes, most of the doors opened and many people ran towards the southern slave banjos. But Sudanese women have kept their distance. Sweating, trembling like a reed, and shaking in all directions, the deeply frightened boy John Dang somehow managed to control his trembling body and guided the rescuers to the cause of his terror. Several men knelt down and looked under the car. When they saw the teenage girl, they and banjos concluded that she was dead. They further concluded that she was killed and that her dead body was thrown under the largest car. When word spreads that a beautiful teenage girl had been found murdered under the biggest car, the women start jumping to hasty conclusions too. Some of them ruled that the girl was found pregnant with an illegitimate child out of adultery, and because of this reprehensible act, she was killed by her father or brother. Other women concluded that she had been butchered in an honor killing by her brave husband who caught her while she was naked in the act of fornication with his best friend, and she did so in his house and on his bed. In a short time, the big car became surrounded by many spectators. Every man lying on his stomach and watching the murdered girl with mixed feelings. They hate and pity her too. They were all afraid to touch or approach the corpse for fear of unnecessary involvement in murder. While people were looking at the murdered girl and making up all sorts of fairy tales because of her murder, they suddenly saw her body turning on its own in the other direction. Her pretty face could no longer be seen. They can now see her big buttocks and sexy body. Her dress was pulled up, revealing her little red underwear. Wherefore, the eyes of men and youth became wide open. Each one erected his dick and became like a Ramadan cannon. Next, they saw the long legs and sexy thighs of the dead girl folding themselves. As a result, the spectators shouted in unison that she is not dead, she is alive. When it was announced that the hot girl was in fact among the living and not among the dead, 2 adventurers crawled under the biggest car and pulled out the live girl's body. Intisar awoke from her deep sleep when she felt the adventurers' hands pulling her from under the car with her feet. She was horrified when she saw the large gathering of people. Her mind stopped working for a few seconds. When she remembered her nocturnal adventure, she knew her place. She quickly rose to her feet and bowed her head shyly. She has no shoes on her feet. Then the owner of the big car approached her and slapped her on her left cheek with full force. She is about to fall, but her hands catch the car. The owner of the car slapped her again on the head. Intisar grabbed her head and started crying. You must be a dirty street hooker. Didn't you find any other place to hide your shame and disgrace, you whore, you daughter of the haram, except under my car? You want to spoil my name among the people of this building. Please, sir, don't slap me again, or say I'm a whore. Intisar spoke these words while crying loudly. I told you to get out of my car, you dirty bitch. Sir, I didn't make a mistake. I am a good girl. You have no right to hit me and insult me for no reason. The angry man grabbed the homeless girl's hand and dragged her out of the compound. When they reached the gate, he spat in her face and kicked her buttocks with his foot. The fugitive wife fell on her face outside the compound. She hurt her forehead. Despite that, Intisar immediately stood up and started to leave. She is afraid that the angry man will attack her again or ask others to attack and beat her as well. She also fears that people will throw stones at her and kill her as a street prostitute. As she was leaving, she began to hear the crowd shouting all kinds of obscene names and nasty insults in her ears. Yet she ignored them and walked as fast as she could. When she got to a far distance and could no longer hear their cries, curses, and accusations, she stopped. Then Intisar decided to sit down and get some rest. As soon as she sat down, the homeless girl was shocked to discover that she had no shoes. She is afraid to go back under the big car where she left her shoes. She expected those angry people over there to kill her or hand her over to the police. Unfortunately, what the Sharia court calls the disobedient, runaway and homeless Muslim wife, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, began her second day by wandering the streets of Khartoum City without her shoes. The homeless girl stood in the middle of the road, looking deeply sadly at her bare feet. She wonders what people will think of her when they see her walking without shoes. She knows she can't walk in such a miserable state. Then Intisar suddenly remembered that the old guard of the Grand Mosque had told her that she could meet the Imam of the biggest house of Allah in Sudan when he came to lead the faithful Muslim men in the public Friday prayer. So, the homeless girl had a glimmer of hope again. She looked at her watch and realized she had to wait 7 hours before it was time for Friday prayer. She found a huge tree and sat under its shade. She sat in complete silence, and great sadness filled her heart under the shade of that tree for an hour. While sitting, she put her head on her knees. Her feet extend forward. She doesn't want people to see her face. She thought it would save her from people's annoyance and curiosity. Her mind is busy with many scary thoughts. Her first night on the streets of the capital city was a long and horrific nightmare. She spent her first night fighting with humanoid beasts everywhere her feet took her. While she was sitting and contemplating her dark and unknown future, the fleeing girl began to hear the steps of some people approaching her. "What are you doing here?" a man asks in an angry voice. Intisar looked up and saw 2 huge policemen standing above her. "I'm just taking a rest, sir." "Where are your shoes?" "I don't have shoes." "This means that you are either a street whore or a crazy girl." "I'm not one of those girls. Someone stole my bag and another guy took my shoes." "Why didn't you go home?" "I have no house in the city, sir. I am a visiting girl." "Where did you come from?" "I am from Kassala City." The homeless girl deliberately lied. "Where do your relatives live in the city?" "I don't have anyone here." "Then get up on your feet and follow us. We have a beautiful home for homeless street girls like you." "Where do you want to take me?" "To lock up, of course. But I haven't committed any crime. Don't you know that bitches, homeless girls, and prostitutes are criminals and the law punishes them? I'm not a street bitch nor a homeless girl. Come with us, you whore of the streets, without arguing. You are now under arrest." However, the alleged street prostitute girl refused to obey the orders of the 2 police officers. She put her head on her knees and started crying. One of the policemen grabbed her hand and forced her to stand up. When she stood up, he pulled her hand and started to drag her forward. Intisar was forced to follow the 2 police officers against her will. She now walks between the 2 policemen as an innocent lamb carried to the slaughterhouse. As she went with them, she envisioned 2 possibilities. They may either force her to tell the truth about her miserable situation and why she has run away from home, or they may gang rape her and then kill her to cover up their heinous crime. To avoid such a heartbreaking fate, Intisar decided to free herself from the 2 police officers before it's too late. She looked at them and noticed that one of them is fat and the other is obese, and both have huge and heavy bodies. So, Intisar figured if she could escape from both of them, neither of them would follow her or catch her. But she noticed that the road they were walking was crowded with people. She understood that if she ran now, other people might catch her and hand her over to the 2 police officers. Therefore, she waited until they took her to a road that was clear of pedestrians and cars in all 4 directions. When she saw that there was no one along the road around, she suddenly launched her legs like 2 rockets that shot off land to ground from between the 2 fat policemen, and she ran for her honor, her freedom, and her dear life. The 2 law enforcement officers chased her for a while but were unable to arrest her. They were stopped panting like 2 old dogs and let her run away from them. When Intisar realized that the two large policemen had not appeared in her sight, she stopped running and decided to take a break. She rested for a few minutes and continued jogging again. She walked fast for another hour along the riverbank and then stopped. She looked around and found herself close to the zoo. The fugitive wife crossed Nile River Street and stood near the entrance gate. She saw that there was a long line of visitors standing at the gate. In her heart, she wished she could enter the zoo and see the monkey cage. She recalled the bitter experience that a lonely monkey had after being separated from its partner in the cage. Intisar felt that she was going through the same bitter experience now. However, she preferred the sad monkey's condition to her now painful separation from her lover Sammy and her family. At least the lonely monkey has a safe place to sleep and food to eat. As she contemplated her wretched condition and associated it with the life of the sad ape, the sad homeless girl saw a newly married couple standing in line with the visitors of the animal garden. Intisar immediately went to them and congratulated them. When she was about to walk away, the happy bride stopped her and said, "Do you mind if I ask you a personal question?" "Not at all," answering the fugitive wife. "When we saw you standing there without your shoes on, we thought you might be a crazy girl. Yet when you came here and so politely congratulated us on our happy marriage, I personally felt the need to ask you the reason for walking barefoot on such a hot day. Is there any good reason why you should punish yourself in this painful self-humiliation? Do you grieve while you are mourning the loss of someone very dear to you? I don't want to ruin your happy honeymoon with my tragedy. I'm just a miserable girl. I would be glad if you would not pressure me into speaking more than I have said about myself. Of course, we don't want to pressure you into saying something that isn't a good thing to say. However, if the refusal is due to our honeymoon, we would at least be willing to give you any assistance you may need. I would be very happy and very grateful if you would buy me a ticket to the zoo. Of course, this is a really small thing to ask of us. In order for us to buy your entry ticket, please come and stand in line with us." With tears running down her cheeks like hot acid, the homeless girl thanked the happy couple and then joined the long line of visitors. The escaped girl spent 5 hours inside the zoo. She spent most of the time sitting alone in the shade of a tree, staring from afar at the lonely monkey. And as she sat, she silently poured many tears upon her miserable condition. She understood that the life of the lonely monkey is much better than hers. At least the single animal has shelter and food, but she has none of these necessities of life. She became homeless in her own country. Even any Eritrean refugee girl has a better life than her. Anyway, at 12:30 in the afternoon, Intisar heard a loud voice from the muezzin in the Grand Mosque calling the faithful Muslim men to perform Friday prayer. The fugitive girl immediately stood up, wiped her tears, and walked towards the largest mosque in the triangular capital city of Sudan. It took her 10 minutes to reach the biggest house of God in her country. Then the homeless girl sat outside the mosque compound in a place where beggars gather to ask for alms. After a long wait and great anxiety, Intisar saw that the devout Muslim men appeared to come in rows from inside the mosque. They wore white clothes that covered their bodies from the top of their heads to the end of their legs. As if they were in the rituals of the Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca City, some of them seem happy and cheerful. Few of them look rich and arrogant, while the majority of them seemed as miserable as her current situation, and they were afraid and worried. From the difference in their clothes and the colors of their skin, Intisar knew who those among them are who considered themselves superior Arab men and looked down upon other African Sudanese among them who were called black slaves with contempt and arrogance. And who among them mourns his fate because he was born into an inferior family of black parents, and then denies his African origin and falsely claims that he is a black Arab man. Although a few minutes before they had all stood before their God and their Maker, yet when they came out of his house their manners revealed their hypocrisy, their elemental accusations, and their misdeeds. The homeless girl waited impatiently for her Muslim religious leader to come out. She knows that she can recognize Imam Maulana among the thousands of faithful men who have gathered together. In her home city of Gadaref, she had many unpleasant encounters with them. After a long wait, she saw the blessed Imam leaving the mosque. He has a meter-long white beard and looks like the leader of a terrorist group. He is surrounded by 6 powerful bodyguards. 3 more guards run in front of him and push back the faithful and the beggars who are trying to approach him. The homeless girl realized that if she tried to reach him, she would face stiff resistance. Therefore, Intisar preferred to wait for him to get to his car. When she saw one of his bodyguards go and open the door of a big luxury car, she ran and parked herself near that new Mercedes. She can see from her hiding place how the hands of the blessed Imam were kissed and touched by the faithful Muslim men. Some of them kneel down and kiss his footprints on the hot sand. Some of them take the sand from his footsteps and rub it on their faces and bodies, thinking that they will be cured of their diseases. Others fall before him and worship him in the belief that they will be blessed with abundance through his dignity supposedly attached to his sacred body. The homeless and runaway girl waited until the blessed Imam reached his car and was about to enter it. At that time, she ran towards him and grabbed his hand and kissed it. In the blink of an eye, 6 jagged hands grabbed her body and pushed her away. Intisar fell headlong to the ground. She exposed her legs, thighs, buttocks, and red underwear. She cut her lips and forehead. Nevertheless, the fugitive wife gathered all her strength and got up. Now her mouth and forehead are bleeding. The virtuous Imam and the male believers were amazed when they saw her face. She does not look poor or a beggar, but a remarkably young and beautiful Arab girl. She does not look like a black Sudanese African girl, but her face and skin color reveal that she is a pure Arab girl. "Young lady, what's wrong with you?" Maulana asks. "Oh, our blessed Imam," Intisar says, "I want your help and protection." "Where's your father?" "My father passed away 10 years ago." "How can I help you? And what is your problem?" "Since yesterday I've been walking the streets. I don't have a home or money." "Where's your family?" "I ran away from home because they wanted to force me to live with a man I didn't want to marry." "You got away from one man, and you want to be the woman of many men. Which choice is better for you?" "Because I am not a bad woman. That is why I have come to ask for your help and protection from the bad guys in the streets of Khartoum." "How do you expect me to help you rebel against your family?" "I did not rebel against my family. I can't tell you my entire tragic story on the road. If you would take me to your house, I would explain my problem to you before your virtuous wife and other honorable members of your family. A wise and righteous Muslim man will not find a girl on the street and take her home." The blessed Imam spoke these words to his followers instead of the beggar girl who is crying and begging him for help. When the honorable Imam of the biggest mosque in Sudan gave his wise advice to his righteous listeners, he turned his face away from the begging young woman, got into his brand new Mercedes car, and his driver started driving him immediately, leaving behind them the so-called bad street girl standing in front of the house of God while she was rejected, ridiculed, and insulted. She was also injured in the face and slashed on her forehead and her private parts exposed when she was pushed by his bodyguards and fell upside down. She was left standing like a statue when her heart was shattered and filled with fears and her mind clouded by dark thoughts. She was left standing like a statue when her heart was shattered and filled with fears and her mind clouded by dark thoughts. Her forehead and lips were bleeding profusely.